ourselves. We just were. I just realized that you're having people come up and down and on the stage, right?
Yes.
This is the way. How many do you need?
We don't actually need. I believe she's not free.
will let you drive. Just don't fall off the edge here.
Okay. He wants me to save it over here or just open it and take it? It takes a long time. Yeah, I think that's fine. Just minimize it, just run it off. And just leave it under.
Hi, everybody. It is 3 o'clock now, so we're going to get started here. If everyone could take a seat. Right, let me... Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to the second part of Sunday Afternoon with LITA, which is the awards presentation and President's Program. And where we will hear in just a little bit, we will hear from Kimberly Bryant from Black Girls Code, and we'll hear more about Kimberly in just a moment. And we have 3 awards and 3 scholarships, and we have 2 award winners here today that we would like to present to you and congratulate. So the first is the LITA Library High Tech Award, and to introduce our winner, the chair, Holly Yu, is going to come up and introduce our winner. So you both could come up.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to present the LITA Library High Tech Award for Outstanding Achievement in Communication and Library Information Technology to Vicky Reich and David Rosenthal for their outstanding achievement in advancing and educating the profession with cutting-edge technology through the LOXIS program. Having created an open-source library-led preservation system that ensures preserved electronic content remains authentic, authoritative, and accessible through 2 distinct networking environments that empower library communities around the world to protect both commercial and locally created digital assets. Please join me in congratulating Vicky and David for their outstanding achievement.
I want to say thank you very much. We were very surprised by this honor, and also to say that the prize money has been donated to the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, specifically so that they could be here at ALA. So please go visit them in the exhibit hall.
Thank you, Vicky. Now, we're not ready. Yeah. Sorry. And now it is my honor to introduce Arlene Green, Manager Liz Publishing from Emerald Group Publishing, to present the check.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to present that prize to Vicky that is subsequently being donated, and offer very many congratulations from Library High Tech Journal, which is published by Emerald.
Okay, next up we have Regina Corey, who is our the committee chair this year for the LITA Ex Libris Student Writing Award.
Hello. This year, committee members of LITA Ex Libris Student Writing Award were extremely pleased to award for the very thoughtful manuscript, which is called Linking Libraries to the Web, Linked Data and the Future of the Bibliographic Record. Our winner was Bridget Mooney Gonzalez. Please welcome her and wish her everything the best. It was a very awesome manuscript, and we had really had fun reading through it. Bridget will receive a certificate of merit. She will be published in the Information Technology and Libraries issue, and she will also get a $1,000 check from my colleague from Ex Libris, Olga Karanikos. Yes.
Okay, unfortunately, our other winners were not able to attend, but I just want to go ahead and announce those and recognize the sponsors and the committee chairs that are here today. First, the winner of the Frederick G. Kilgore Award for Research in Library and Information Technology is Michael Buckland. And I would like to recognize Eric Mitchell, who's our committee chair, and Eric Childress, who is the consulting project manager from OCLC. Thank you. Thank you to the Erics, and congratulations to Michael. Next are our scholarship winners, and the first is the LITA Christian LaRue Memorial Scholarship, and our winner is Adriana Puckett, and Colby Riggs is our committee chair, and Frank McDonald is the vice president for sales, public library, and government, and this does not say from where. Baker and Taylor, thank you very much. I have your business card sitting on my chair, but I did not write that down. Could you all please stand as well? Thank you. Thank you to Colby and Frank, and congratulations to Adriana. We also offer the LITA OCLC Minority Scholarship, and this year's winner is Olivia Dorsey. And I would like to recognize Shanitra Bishop, who's our committee chair, and Eric Childress again from OCLC. Congratulations to Olivia, and thank you to Shanitra and Eric. And finally, we have the LITA LSSI Minority Scholarship, and this year's winner is Jason N. Toms. And again, I would like to recognize Shanitra Bishop and Steve Kaufman, the vice president from LSSI. Okay, congratulations to all of our winners. Okay, now it gives me great pleasure to welcome Miss Kimberly Bryant, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why she's here to talk to us today. And apologies for holding my phone, but as you know, the wireless has been a challenge here, and my notes are electronic, so I'm going to read to you now from my phone. Lack of diversity in the technology world has gotten quite a lot of attention and scrutiny recently in the world at large and here in our own library technology community. This criticism is not only warranted, but must be addressed. One place to look is with early education. This lack of diversity is not due to lack of interest of these wonderful and curious minds. A lack of exposure and access to STEM topics and education is a more likely culprit. Our speaker today, Kimberly Bryant, who is the founder and CEO of Black Girls Code, and she founded Black Girls Code with the intent of giving young and preteen girls of color opportunities to learn on-demand skills and technology, in-demand skills and technology, and computer programming at a time when they are naturally thinking about what they want to be when they grow up. She is at #6 GEMS, GEMS on Twitter. And if you would like to tweet about the program, please use the hashtag LITAPP for President's Program. I'm delighted to bring you today, with the support of Google, Miss Kimberly Bryant.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to, let me try to get my technology situated here. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon to share with you a little bit about my journey with Black Girls Code, as Cindi mentioned. It's been only 3 years, but it seems like we've made a large impact in a very short amount of time. And so it's a pleasure to share with you a little bit about that journey. So thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit of our story. And also thank you for spending your afternoon listening to me as opposed to what so many people all around the world seem to be doing right now, and that is staring at a TV screen somewhere watching the World Cup. I think I've been in about 5 or 6 cities over as many days and 3 different countries, and everywhere I go, people are glued to the TV screen watching the World Cup. So thank you for not watching whatever game is playing right now. Spend a little bit of time with me. I also think it's important to bring to light another historical event that is happening right now and being recognized in many places, and that is the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer. For those of you my age or maybe a little bit older, you're aware that Freedom Summer happened in 1964 when 1,000 students went to Mississippi with one goal in mind. And that was to bring equal justice to the residents of Mississippi that had been disenfranchised of their voting rights. And they spent 10 weeks in Mississippi, all over the state of Mississippi, with great peril and risk to their own personal lives to really forge this path of justice and social justice and equality. I think it's so important to honor those students, those change agents, those social activists, because they really saw an opportunity to bring their own personal power to a social issue that was important at the time. That legacy of social activism is something that's very real today in the movement for digital equity. And I think it's that legacy that led me to found Black Girls Code. An author once said that legacy is bearing fruit for the kingdom of God. I'm the mother, daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter of what I like to call a legacy of hope. My grandmother was born in 1914, right at the peak of the Second Industrial Revolution. And when she finally migrated to Memphis, Tennessee, the big city, from the Mississippi Delta with my great-grandmother, who was a free-born woman of color, but born on the plantation, they came with very little inheritance, but they came with a lot of hope for better opportunity for the next generation. So several decades later, when my mother was born, right at the peak of the civil rights movement, she inherited the same legacy of hope and entered her world sphere at a time when there was so much social activism and just a push for justice and equal rights. So having been born myself 3 years after the Freedom Summer movement, I feel that I am an inheritor of the same legacy of hope, touched by a little bit of fear for the next generation. And that's exactly how I found myself on this path 3 years ago, when I noticed that my 12-year-old daughter, what I like to call a digital native, was glued to the computer or a video game screen nonstop. And as I tried to encourage her to do something more productive with her time, and I realized that she may one day go on a path much like I had done many years earlier as a college-educated woman, engineer, I definitely had lots of dreams and hopes for her, tinged with a little bit of fear, because I knew how hard the path for me had been in my STEM career 20 plus years. But Rather than discourage her from this path and becoming a creator and an innovator, I decided to do something that I had no plans to do at all. I will not hesitate to tell you that I did not want to start a nonprofit organization. I did not want to be in corporate America for much longer. I was ready to do something different. I was really looking to start my own startup. But the path called me because I knew, like my grandmother, I knew like my mother, I knew like my great-grandmother, I knew like those students that forged this path 50 years ago in the Freedom Summer, that if we didn't stand up to make a change for the next generation, no one would. And so that is where I found myself at the cusp of a revolution, this next revolution of a social shift and change, a new revolution of driving this disruptive change as we enter this era of transformation and fundamental growth with the age of innovation. And that's where I am today as a founder of Black Girls Code. Black Girls Code is a movement very much like those movements of my youth, and the winds of social change and cultural change and economic change are definitely blowing. If we look at the statistics, we find from the U.S. Department of Labor, by just estimates recently, that by the year 2020, there'll be 1.4 million computing-related jobs. This is just in the U.S. alone. Computing jobs are currently the fastest growing and highest paid positions in our economy. And yet, here in the U.S., we can only fill about 30% of those with the U.S. computing bachelor's grads at the current rates that we're graduating today. But the reason that Black Girls Code is focused on the work that we do is because, with few exceptions, Black women and women of color have been by and large absent from this current technology innovation explosion which has swept our world. And when I found this to be the case, it was really by chance. I had spent more than 25 years in industry, and most of that in the pharmaceutical and biotech industry that is a more mature industry and very diverse at its core. But when I took a look at the numbers for engineers and computer scientists overall, I was really shocked by what I found. When I graduated in the middle of the 80s, 1985 was a peak in terms of women receiving degrees in computer science. We were receiving about 35% of CS degrees in 1985. Today, that number for women overall is less than 12%. Now, if you look at that number for women of color, African American women specifically, that number plummets to less than 2 or 3%. And if we look at Hispanic women, the numbers are even worse. So less than 1% of Hispanic sisters receive a bachelor's degree in computer science, and our Native American sisters are less than 0.5%. African American women only receive 0.5% of PhDs in computer science. Now, when I saw those numbers, I was pretty shocked, as we all should be in the room, because when we see this wealth of opportunity in one particular field, and women are receiving degrees at record pace and on bachelor's degrees on all across the board in traditional STEM fields, why is the number less today for women receiving degrees in computer science than it was 20 plus years ago? So this question of why women of color are largely absent from leadership roles and as active participants in the IT economy is what drove me to find Black Girls Code. So some may think, well, it's that women and people of color are not interested in technology. They're not really exposed to technology. But the numbers tell a different story. As consumers, we dominate this landscape. African Americans are more than 29% likely than the average American adult to own a smartphone. They're more than 13% more likely to own a tablet or PC or iPad, some type of pad device. That's just in terms of technology. But if we look at social networks, the Twitters, the Pinterest, the Facebooks, we over-index on every social platform there is. You can't name one that women and people of color don't over-index on. We're on social media, and I don't think that's going to change. So the point is that we're heavy consumers and users of technology, but we're not finding ourselves with a seat at the table as creators or innovators or leaders of technology, which is a problem. Because despite the growing changes and the equal, I'd say, exposure to technology, this perception of the white male geek has become the dominant narrative when we define the public persona of a techie. And girls, all girls, but especially women of color, are summarily bypassed as both creative and capable change agents in the technology industry. Black Girls Code was founded with the sole purpose to redefine this dominant narrative and to shift this paradigm and to broaden the image of what it means to be a computer geek and to change the face of technology. Our work is really focused on redefining the discussion around race, gender, the intersectionality, and how that impacts the technology industry. Our mission is to empower young women of color ages 7 to 17 to become the tech leaders and innovators of tomorrow, and to embrace the current tech marketplace by teaching them skills in computer programming and technology. We have what I would like to call a small goal, and that goal is to teach 1 million girls of color to code by the year 2040. We would like to think of ourselves as the de facto Girl Scouts of technology. In a little less than 2 years, we've bounded upon this whole Learn to Code movement as one of the only organizations of its type. Maybe I should have showed you guys all those slides, but I talked there, but you know. The only organization of its type with a focus on introducing girls of color to technology. And we do this by introducing them to courses in mobile app development, robotics, game design. We really try to teach them to look at everything that technology touches because we feel it touches whatever career path they may choose in the future. Since we started Black Girls Code, we've expanded our organization to over 7 chapters in the US, with 1 chapter in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we've reached over 3,000 girls, and we continue to grow. We're on a mission to change the face of technology, as I mentioned before, 1 girl at a time, by showing the world that girls, Black girls do code, and they do so much more. One of the things that I like to speak to, because I'm often asked, why will we focus on Black girls? Why not focus on all students? Of course, this should be something that's important for all students to learn. We look at coding as a second language, and we feel strongly that all young people should learn to code. But if we look just at the numbers that have been recently released by companies such as Google, Yahoo, LinkedIn, Facebook was the latest, I think, we see that not only is this a heavy problem in terms of women being employed in some of the major tech industries driving innovation and change in our economy now, but if you saw any of those reports, you would see at the very bottom of all those demographics in the company set women of color, with less than 2 to 1% of women in every single one of those large technology companies today. That's just the numbers and the reality of where we are that help us paint a path to where we need to go. So for sure, the issues with inequality today are much different than they were 50 years ago. Much different issues in many ways than those Freedom Summer students had to face. But inequities still persist, especially for women and girls. So I wanted to just give you a few statistics to tell you some of the things that we're facing in driving equality and equal access for women. In 2010, there were 26 million girls in the US. of which out of that 26 million, 3.7 million were Black or African American, and 6 million were Latinas. However, in 2010, the poverty rates ranged from 12% among white girls to 37% among Black and African American girls. And about a third, 33%, of all Hispanic girls aged 5 to 17 live below the poverty line. If we look at people of color overall, the unemployment rate for Blacks in America is double that for white. Students of color from African American and Latino communities perform an average of 2 levels below their peers in math and language arts in grades 4 through 8, and they have an average high school dropout rate of 37%. For most girls, like my daughter, Kai, which was my driving motivation for founding Black Girls Code, the issues start much earlier than college. Over half of middle school girls express an interest in computer science based on a study conducted by the Girl Scouts. But by the time they reach high school, less than 2% say they plan to form a major in computer science or engineering. If these same girls even make it through high school, more than 8% of all African American girls will drop out, as will 16% of Hispanic girls, almost double the US national average. The state of girls' education worldwide is a critical issue today. It's improved significantly over the past decade, but issues still abound. Girls continue to lag behind their male counterparts universally all over the world in terms of access to education, completion of schooling, and acquisition of basic skills, not even before they get to the technology skills, but basic skills such as literacy. Globally, there are 10 million girls that are out of school, 10 million more girls out of school than boys. 41 million girls worldwide are still denied a primary education. This is just K through 12. Further along the pipeline, women make only 77 cents on the dollar to the male counterparts, and they hold less than 14% of executive officer positions at Fortune 100 companies and represent less than 1% of startup founders. In the majority of companies, many of them Black and brown, women's wages represent between 70 and 90% of men's. Ethnicity and gender interact in many of these cases to create especially large pay gaps for minority women. And yet, despite that, women perform 66% of the world's work. How about that, ladies? We produce 50% of the food, but earn only 10% of the income and own 1 to 2% of the property. With these numbers alone, I think it's pretty clear why we're focused on the work we're doing for women and girls by using technology as a social and economic equalizer. The time to drive fundamental change for women and girls by leveraging technology is now. And with Black Girls Code, that is our focus, to drive this change by bringing girls and women to the forefront of the digital revolution as equal partners and creators, and by emphasizing that an economy cannot survive, an economy cannot thrive if we summarily bypass the skills of half of its participants. Now, despite the dire statistics, I always want to talk about some of the stories of success that we have achieved with the work that we've done with our girls. The student here, Ida, came to our program in early 2012. She was about 12 years old then, I think maybe 11. And the only reason the family even found out about Black Girls Code is because they were looking for an opportunity for their older son to attend a program after school to learn about technology and the technology industry. And they asked the founders of that organization, this is a great opportunity for the family and we really appreciate it, but really the genius of our family is my daughter Ida. So do you have anything for her? And they said, yes, you should go down the way and talk to Black Girls Code. So when Ida came into our program, I'll never forget her very first day in class, and I spoke to her, welcomed her into the class, asked her if she knew anything about computer coding. She said, "Miss Bryant, I really don't know anything about computer science or programming. I don't even know what that is. I just know my parents and my father specifically told me I need to be here." And I was like, "Well, do you maybe want to be in computer science?" And she's like, "Well, no, I really want to be a doctor." I was like, "Well, that's great, but maybe you can just try it and see if you like it." And she did. She started with a web design class, and I was surprised at the end of the class when the students among themselves and their peer groups were picking the students that had done the best work that day. Ida was one of those that rose to the top of the class, selected by her peers because of what she learned and was able to create in the course of this one-day computer science program on web design. But she didn't stop there. She came to class after class, and by the time we got to the summer, she came to our summer camp. Now, I don't usually teach these days. I usually like our very talented volunteers to do that for me. And I try to stay on the background most of the time. But I was teaching this particular summer camp, and I had to step out of the room for a minute. And I reached into the crowd and asked Ida, could she take over the rest of the class? So I thought maybe she would be a little hesitant, and maybe they would just teach the kids a little bit, but it wasn't much done by the time it came back to the class. To my surprise, not only did Ida, as well as one other of our older students, teach the entire class how to do web design. They gave them tutorials, and they really had by the time it got back, a whole class of 25 girls, led by Ida, had finished their web pages. And I was happy and very proud that she had gone from a student to a teacher. But she didn't stop there, because last fall or early spring, I got an urgent text from her father, like, "Miss Bryant, we need to talk to you." It's like, "Okay, what's going on?" He was like, "Well, Ida was after school and she was showing one of her friends something on the computer, and one of the teachers just happened to stop by to see what they were doing all huddled around this computer. And she was surprised because Ida told her she was showing them how to build a web page, which is this thing she learned with Black Girls Code. The teacher was overwhelmed by the fact that Ida could not only do this, but teach her other peers how to do so as well. And so she asked Ida to come back in the fall and teach a web design class as well as a mobile app class to all the middle school students in her class. This is just one example of what we see in terms of our girls and their ability, by just planting a few seeds, to go from just learning for themselves to becoming social change agents. These other girls here as another testimony of success. One of the things that's really important about teaching girls to code is they like to utilize code for social change and social activism. The three girls you see here, one of them is my daughter. She doesn't like when I show that picture, but that is my daughter on the end with the microphone. And the other two students, they are both 15, and the youngest in the middle is actually 11. These three students in December attended a hackathon event, which was a 2-night event where they stayed and worked on building a web product. They built actually 2 applications to focused on hunger and food banks and connecting people in the city of Oakland that needed to access a food bank with the actual food that was available in the food bank. And then they decided, just for fun, to create a companion app that would connect the different businesses that had food that could go into the food bank together. And this, again, are 2 15-year-old students and 1 11-year-old student. We've received requests for this app from all over the U.S. as well as for countries outside of the U.S. One of the things that makes me so proud of the work that the girls do, and this is what keeps me going, is that women and girls are agents of change in their families, their communities, and even the world. If we empower women with the technical, career, and entrepreneurial skills to compete in the global economy, we are changing the trajectory of communities and ensuring the economic stability of our nation. I truly believe that by focusing on removing the barriers that impede women and girls of color, we create a cascading effect of issues of technical inclusion for all and a plethora of seemingly unrelated social issues, and that by removing these issues for women of color, we improve the individual lives, enhance our communities, and affect the greater good for all. Again, when I think about what will be my personal legacy, I hope that it extends beyond the walls of my household. I hope that my personal legacy will be securing the future for girls of color like my daughter Kai, and will involve bringing women and girls of color to the forefront as both tech leaders and creators of tomorrow. You play an important role, I believe, as part of the library community because you sit right at the hub of every single community across the U.S. So many of the families that we touch in an after-school setting, you see every day. Using the skills and tools within the library framework can plant some seeds for the work that we're doing to introduce women and girls to technology. And it's an important one because that's not happening today, unfortunately, in many of our schools. So as we look for solutions in other places within the community to drive change for the community, the library plays such a very, very important role. Our collective legacy to the next and future generations must be girded in the underlying truth that no country can get ahead if it leaves half of its people behind. Ensuring that we use technology not just as a lever for advancement for a few, but as a great economic equalizer must be our rallying call for justice as global citizens of the world in the midst of our most important collective revolution. It must be our legacy to create a better world built on a framework of access, inclusion, social and economic justice for those who will follow us in our footsteps. Teach one girl, and she'll teach many more. And watch out for that girl, because one day she may change the world. Thank you.
We have a couple of mics set up in the room if there are any questions for Ms. Bryant before we conclude. Rachel.
Hi, I work at a university in Houston, and I was wondering, you had a slide up that showed where Black Girl Code hubs were in different cities. Could you tell us how maybe we could get these to come to our own cities?
Yes. So we're in 7 U.S. cities currently. That's the Bay Area, New York, Memphis, Tennessee. I always leave one person out. Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, Georgia, and Las Vegas. We're here in Las Vegas. And we are doing a pilot currently in Dallas. So we're close. So we didn't know exactly where to start in Texas because we had interest in Houston, we had interest in Dallas, we had interest in San Antonio. And Austin. So we decided to start a pilot in Dallas with one of our corporate partners there. What we like to do is pilot programs, which allows us to come in and work like in one facility with one community partner for a period of 6 months before we launch a large chapter so that we can build our student base, build our volunteer base, build a connection with community organizations as well as school systems. So we take requests and we do have a running list, but Houston is close. We're planning on trying to get there very soon. So definitely reach out and we can see what we can do. Yes.
Along those same lines, I'm from Phoenix Public Library, and we have started doing a great Mach 1 room. We don't have the staffing to keep it open all the time, but they're doing Minecraft, coding, 3D printing, all that kind of stuff. Do you have any recommendations for getting the tech community and the corporate partners involved in trying to start up some of this? Because it seems to me so key for workforce development and knowledge economy.
Very much so. I think one of the things that has helped us to grow and expand is because we probably have almost 2,000 volunteers right now, and they're all from industry. So I think one of the things would to seek a corporate partner because they have volunteer opportunities for the employees all the time. and get them to come in and build that into their community outreach plan to come into the computer lab and actually host classes. So a lot of the things that we do in the Bay Area particularly are not necessarily formal things, but they may be code-ins. So we had some students during their spring break to go to Twitter and just work on any project that they were working on, either in Black Girls Code or outside. And Twitter brought in engineers to actually work with them and sit with them and mentor them. So those are ways that it doesn't necessarily have to be a very tight structure, but you can get them to come in and share with the kids and actually mentor them and give them that encouragement. And we got so much out of that from the students. So we're in the midst of a class at that time, so we let them go with their homework. And by the next Saturday, they're very productive. So, definitely see if you can find corporate partners that would do something like that, somewhat informal, where they come in and just work with kids on whatever projects they're kind of doing on their own. Yeah.
How young are the girls, and are you trying to reach lower in younger girls?
Great question. We start officially at 7, but we've had 6-year-olds in our classes, and this is primarily because the mothers just bring them, even though we say 7, and and it happens all the time. But we've had really good success. Not all of the classes are really appropriate for kids at a very young age. So when we're doing some of the mobile app development classes, we try to start at least at 10, maybe 12 and up. But when we're doing some of the web design classes, especially with the tools that are out there now, like from Mozilla, using Scratch, we can go as low as 6 easily. And I think that's a good age to start. Now, we have not personally looked at starting younger than that, only because we want to make sure that we can create programs that are age appropriate and engaging for the younger students. But I do feel that you can start younger than that. I do think with some of the things that I've been seeing and some of the companies that are working in this space, there's some very light tools that you can start probably as young as kindergarten and get kids engaged with technology. You're welcome.
So it sounds like you have these workshops that occur, and maybe they go over a long period of time. Something I've seen at UC Berkeley is we have a lot of students come to us that don't have either the technology at home or the other infrastructure they need to succeed. And so I was wondering if you might comment on what things you've seen in that space.
That is a huge issue for us as well. Because most of the students that come into our programs come from lower economic backgrounds, and they do not have a laptop at home. Now, what they do have a lot of is phones, so I don't know why. Well, you saw a 29% smartphone usage. They have lots of phones. So one of the things that we've tried to do more of is do some of the programs like App Inventor, where they can do some coding on the phone, but you can't build on the phone. You can't build on an iPad. And so that's one of the things that we struggle with in our program. We try to partner with universities a lot, or either like libraries a lot, where there is equipment for our students to use during the class. But we really still struggle, even in our program, because the kids don't have access to these tools when they leave. So we're hoping as the next couple of decades start to move forward that these devices for creating become cheaper, I'm hoping. There are other tools so we can really address that issue, because it's still one that even we struggle with. Always a struggle with equipment.
Hi, I'm Zola Mumford from Seattle. When I'm not being a librarian, we've communicated by email. I curate the annual Langston Hughes African American Film Festival in Seattle, and I wrote to you to ask for permission to show the film, Black Girls Code, and we've shown it, I think we've shown it a total of 3 times to completely different audiences, one of them at Paul Allen's Experience Music Project, and people respond to the project with so much enthusiasm. We don't have a chapter. We do have other technology organizations, but there is a great deal of local interest. My question is, are there plans for long-term evaluation or assessment? For example, checking in with the 15-year-olds 10 years from now, or is that something that happens with one-on-one mentorships?
We are actually doing a project this year that we just got funded for with National Science Foundation to do just that. So one of the things we started in 2011, so we just have our first high schoolers that were freshmen this past year. So we're just starting to see our kids go through the pipeline. So I say we're just the first one that are freshmen, because if you look at our statistics across the board, any place probably maybe other than Johannesburg, I'm not sure about there, the largest number of students we have are 10 to 12. Any city, across the board, any city, 10 to 12, which makes sense. That's middle school. That's when they're still kind of in that age where they're interested in technology. But by high school, it drops off the side of the cliff. So our hopes and what we're hoping to see with the study with NSF is if our early intervention to the point early and getting girls in the pipeline and in the program at a much earlier time keeps them in the program through high school on to college. So we're hoping to do some longitudinal work and trying to see how our program impacts their goals and their career path by starting to actually follow some of our girls all through the pipeline. Another thing we really see just based on the feedback that we're getting from parents is that girls that participate in our program are seeing increase in their participation and also participation in technology outside of Black Girls Code. So that means they're going into their high school robotics teams. They're going into their math teams. They're going outside of Black Girls Code to actually sign up for different coding courses that we don't even teach. So one of the things that we want to see is what we teach in Black Girls Code impacting that. Is it impacting that increase in their math scores? Is it increasing that increase in their science scores? Because that's what the parents are coming back and reporting to us. So we're hoping to start with this very small NSF grant and then do even more in-depth study with that help, hopefully, of NSF and other organizations in the future past this year. You're welcome.
Other questions?
Can you talk briefly about the learning environment that these girls are introduced to coding in?
Yes, let me see if I can go back to that one slide I have here that kind of gives you a bit of that. Okay, not that one. Let's see. This one. So this slide kind of gives you a little bit of background in terms of what our classes look like. One of the things that we do is make sure they're culturally rich classes and relevant instruction focus. So many of the classes that we're doing are really focused on doing a project. They're all project-based, solving a project in your community. So that's why the hackathon that the girls participated in December was really focused on building an app that was relevant to the Oakland community. We just did a 3-series. We're doing the 3rd one next week in New Orleans on the 4th. It's really focused on domestic violence for teens. So the girls are coming in. We're working with a nonprofit organization called Break the Cycle, and they're really building these mobile applications that focus on addressing teen domestic violence. We also have a broad socioeconomic class demographic. So that means that although we definitely want to make sure our classes are affordable and accessible to those that are lower income and below, we try to make sure that there's a cross-pollination within the classroom, because we want the girls to be able to go across socioeconomic barriers even in their own group. Another thing that's very important, and it's not here, but is very important for us, is that many of our mentors, I would say about 70% of our mentors, are women. And these are women that are either teachers or computer scientists themselves. They may be designers. We have lots of folks that work all across the tech industry, but lots of women. Not all women, because we do have men that volunteer in our program, men that lead our chapters. But we like to be able to show girls a direct role model in the class. So many of the instructors, many of the mentors that work with the girls are women. And also one thing that's also here is that we try to make sure that they go outside of the classroom and see as many technology companies face-to-face as possible. Although we partner a lot with universities, a lot of our classes are held at places like Google or places like Facebook, or we take them on a field trip, because we want them to get outside of this safe haven and community and see what a path may be, a career path might be. And that's kind of what we focus on. So some of our classes are one-day Saturday workshops. Some of them are week-long summer camps. Some of them may be a 6 to 8 week consecutive class where they come on the weekends. But in all of them, we try to put all these pieces together to really make it as beneficial as possible, as well as supportive as possible for the girls that come into the class.
I would like to ask a question now.
Yeah.
Two things that I'm wondering about. You started out creating the workshops yourself.
Yes.
I'm wondering, how did you do it? Like, did you create the curriculum? And of course, you have an engineering background. What are some things that we can do as a public librarian to maybe host programs on a smaller scale?
Right.
To actually get the programs in our libraries?
So that's a great question. One of the things when we started out, and still today, we use almost all open source curriculum. That's almost all we use. But now we tweak it. So we started out using a curriculum that was developed by scratch because that was our very first pilot program. They had a huge manual. We picked and choose pieces of it, and that's what we use. We use Mozilla still now for a lot of our web classes, so it's all open source. We use App Inventor, it's all open source. So the good thing about really being having a focus in all these opportunities to use open source materials, because most of them have small classes and small activities that you can do with the kids right then. And that's how we got started. Now we do tweak it, and we do have our own custom curriculum, but it's still heavily based in all of those open source tools that are out there for everybody to use. Okay.
Have you ever considered doing like a Google Plus where you video cast it to
Yes, we have thought about that, and we are still thinking about it. So we have been thinking about it for a while. But we want to make sure that we don't lose the experience, because one of the things is, like I was speaking about before, is just the atmosphere when you come into a Black Girls Code class and the collaboration that goes on with the girls. So we're looking at ways so that we can reach more students as well as get more of this information to others that could use it and to do that. But we just don't want to lose that benefit of what the girls gain. I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's just like nothing. Well, if you see the video documentary, you see some of our classes, it's just like an incredible experience, to be in a room with 100. Some of our classes have 100 or 80 girls in it, and to see them learning together and working together as a team is some of the element that we don't want to lose by doing a lot of the videotape sessions. But maybe. I haven't wrote it out. Oh.
Are you doing anything to highlight, besides when you're presenting, to highlight the work, the results of the projects that the girls are working on, or sharing their work across all of your chapters or beyond?
We haven't really, we would like to, but we really haven't found a good tool to do it yet. So that's one of the struggles that we're hoping to kind of solve in the next year or so, to find ways that we can have the girls both collaborate, like so our girls here in Bay Area can collaborate with the girls in Johannesburg, and they can really cross-share like we see in our own individual chapters. There's not really a good tool for us to do it yet, but we're looking at it as we move forward. And this particular hackathon series that we have now that's in partnership with Break the Cycle, we are highlighting the applications that those girls have done in those 3 cities. So the goal is to make one of those apps commercially available and use the proceeds for that particular app to actually donate to a local nonprofit that works with teen domestic violence. So that's one way we're looking at kind of really letting the girls see the impact of their work and letting others see what they've built as well. All right, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks everyone for coming, and I hope that you will join us later this evening at Kahunaville for the LITA Happy Hour, and that is in the Treasure Island Casino, as I understand it. Thanks again.